Just finishing playing and going into coaching, that's what you did, is you watched the Bulls because they were the model of like success and winning at a high level and competing at a high level and being a team.
What's going on, everyone? You are listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. So yesterday, I came out with a video on Patrick Williams and the comparisons that have been made to him and Kawhi Leonard, and it was pretty well received in terms of its overall viewership. I'll link it in the description in case you missed it. But as a result, now I'm not sure how well this one will be received, because generally speaking of, NBA fans, they're not too into stories on coaches, their backgrounds, and how they got to their position that they're in today. But after the game against the Thunder last night, I wanted to talk about Billy Donovan in this dedicated video, the Bulls head coach, formerly the coach of the Oklahoma City Thunder. And what I want to add is that when the Bulls first announced that they were hiring him, I was not happy at all with the selection. This was before I started the channel, as I only started this channel a couple months ago. But had it existed, I likely would have made a video talking about what a mediocre hire this was. However, fast forward to now, and my tone has completely changed. I actually think this was the perfect hire for the Bulls, given where they're at as a team, based on the options that were available anyway. And that's because what Billy Donovan does incredibly well is building his relationships with his young players, developing their talent, and getting the most out of that talent on his team. I'm not saying Billy Donovan is some genius coach or one of the best coaches in the league, because I do think, like most college coaches, he does struggle a bit managing egos of superstar players, although he did the best he could do managing Kevin Durant, Westbrook, and then later on Paul George. But overall, he's a good coach in the NBA. Most successful college coaches generally tend to fail in the NBA. Bulls fans know that all too well, and guys like Fred Hoiberg and Tim Floyd. But Billy Donovan has actually proven he can coach well in this league. Now, before I get into the point that I wanted to make on Billy Donovan, and I guess really it's more of a question to ponder on for Bulls fans, but let's just briefly talk about Donovan's background, history, and how he got to where he is today. Believe it or not, Billy Donovan actually played in the NBA for a very short stint. He was actually drafted in the third round of the 1986 draft, back when they used to have multiple rounds of the draft before they limited it to just two. He was drafted by the Utah Jazz. He was waived before actually playing, and then he played with the Wyoming Wildcatters of the Connecticut Basketball Association, which more or less is the equivalent of today's G League. The following season, though, the New York Knicks, did sign him to a one-year contract, and it was only 1 year that he played NBA basketball after only averaging 2.4 points per game. After he was waived in the offseason, he actually became a stockbroker on Wall Street, which was a job he hated, and eventually quit the job and then became an assistant coach under Rick Pitino for the Kentucky Wildcats. This was in 1989. He did that for a few years, where he then became the head coach for Marshall University in the early 1990s, before finally moving on to Florida's head coach, where he would stay until he entered NBA coaching. He would win back-to-back championships with the Gators and really cemented himself as one of the great coaches in the NCAA. Now, in 2015, after Oklahoma City fired Scott Brooks after failing to lead the star-studded Thunder with Kevin Durant and Westbrook to a title, they decided to hire Billy Donovan. What's funny is that I even remember at the time of this hiring thinking this was a huge mistake for the Thunder, because I always just, have this association with college coaches making terrible coaches in the NBA. And then, of course, the Bulls hired Fred Hoiberg that same year after firing Tom Thibodeau, which I just wanted to pull my hair out upon learning of this news. But anyway, Donovan goes on to coach the Thunder, and his first year, honestly, this team almost won the championship, being led by Kevin Durant. This was the year, if you remember, where they were up 3-1 against the 73-9 Warriors and ultimately blew a 3-1 lead in the Western Conference Finals. Then Kevin Durant dips from the team to go play for the team he blew a 3-1 lead to. The Thunder brought in Paul George, eventually at a later time to sort of take Kevin Durant's place, if you will, but Paul George is nothing even close to Kevin Durant. You can't replace a guy like him. The Thunder continued to underperform, at least for the players they had, and they eventually traded Westbrook to the Rockets, and really that signaled the start of a rebuild. Now, what I'll say is this. I honestly thought Billy Donovan's final season with the Thunder, which was last year, was his best one as a coach from that team. I'm not saying the team was better than the teams he had with Kevin Durant and Westbrook, but that last season, everyone thought this team was going to be one of the worst in the league and that they were just going to tank and initiate the rebuild. Instead, Billy Donovan takes this team to the playoffs, and not just squeaking into the playoffs, they finish with the 5th seed in the West, go 44-28 in the regular season, and then they nearly defeated the Rockets in the first round, taking them to 7 games. Now, the Thunder and Billy Donovan ultimately did not agree to a contract extension, and that's where Arturas came in, just stepped in and scooped him up as soon as he was on the market. So, okay, that was incredibly long-winded in terms of his background. The question I have, or it's more just been something I've been thinking about, because Donovan is such a great development coach and getting the most out of his players, but he isn't necessarily the best when it comes to general X's and O's on the floor. Can we see Billy Donovan being the long-term coach for this Bulls team? Once the players, hopefully anyway, they start to develop and they're ready to make that leap as a team to contention, of course, you're probably thinking, well, it all depends, and there's so many factors. Maybe he develops and grows this roster and they grow together as a team and coaching staff, and if the Bulls are doing well, why would they even consider getting rid of him? And guys, I know all this is so premature because, again, we're barely even a month into the first season, his first season as a coach with the Bulls. So many things can happen, and they just come in here and say that Billy Donovan was simply brought in to develop these young guys, and once that's been done, they'll move on and look for a more renowned coach that has championship level experience. I doubt that's something the front office has already planned out and strategized, because obviously you can't plan for something like that, or at least plan for it long term. Naturally, you're going to have to see how things pan out and pivot as a result. What I'll say though is this, and I've mentioned it in other videos, there is a visible difference in this Bulls team this year from where they were last year. And for the most part, this is the same group of guys that we saw last season, but you can tell Billy Donovan has made an impact in just the short period of time we've seen thus far in how the players carry themselves on the court when things don't go their way, their overall effort and energy, their confidence against good teams. It's exactly the kind of motivator a group of young, talented guys like the Bulls needed. And if that just means Donovan is used for that purpose in this whole rebuild plan and developing some of these guys into stars and at least establish a winning culture for the franchise again, then I'm all for it. Now, let me know what you guys think though. Do you think it's possible that Donovan was brought in as sort of a stepping stone for this Bulls team, if you will, to take them to the next level before they move on to another option and taking them even further? Let me know in the comments. As always, guys, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for your support, and I will catch you in the next one.